Hey everyone, hopefully you're having a good day. My name's Andy, my channel's Finding Value, and I wanted to respond to a YouTube video that I just watched. It was a video done by Reventure Consulting, and he's talking about the Austin, Texas housing crash imminent, plus big bubbles in 5 cities. And I wanted to respond because I want people to know at least my side of the story. I think the data that he has here is not correct. So what he did is he broke the numerator and the denominator of a ratio up and separated them. And then he looked at the price growth in relationship to the numerator and the denominator. I don't think that's a very good way to do it. I think what you want to look at is your price to rent ratio change. That ratio change, the percent change of the ratio, not the numerator and denominator. So if you're coming from a very undervalued condition on a ratio, which Austin is, what you would see is that Austin would potentially be an anomaly in relationship to other ones if it's a fast-growing area. So if you're changing a ratio, of course the numerator is going to grow much faster than the denominator is. So if you're looking at it from a percent growth to a percent growth from an undervalued state, it's quite natural for undervalued cities of that ratio to grow on the right-hand side of this chart if it came from an undervalued state. So the best thing that you'd want to do is you want to look at the straight-up price-to-rent ratio. If you're looking at the price-to-rent ratio for Austin, Texas, and some of these cities, the top city for the worst price-to-rent ratio, which means that it's more beneficial to rent in San Francisco than it is to buy. That's what this price to rent ratio is. And when it gets over about 25, that price to rent ratio, you're better off renting than you would be buying. And San Francisco, Oakland, Honolulu, Hawaii, Los Angeles, New York, Long Beach, Seattle, San Jose, they're all very high price to rent ratios. And it seems like over time, the more desirable areas to live in the world, where real estate is starting to become, I'll say, harder to get, it's more populated. It seems like those areas of desirability and availability have higher price to rent ratios. And as you go down, I have not seen Austin, Texas, and right here, Austin, Texas is 22.29. Now, if you look at it, the price to rent ratio is calculated by dividing the median home price by the median annual rent. A price to rent ratio of 15 or less means it's better to buy. A price to rent ratio of 21 or more means it's better to rent. The ratio for Austin, Texas is 22.29. It's barely above the better to rent ratio. It's not in this historical way out there, 3-4 standard deviations away from normal. It's barely above normal, where it might slightly be better to rent than to buy, depending on what real estate you're looking at in Austin and the deal that you can get on whatever house. Colorado Springs, I know that was in there as well. 20, so that's a 20. So it's kind of in the middle. It might be favorable to rent versus buy at this current moment. So that's nothing that's out of the norm, so to speak. And we don't know necessarily what's going to increase, the denominator or the numerator. Right now, in some of these, the numerator is growing faster than the denominator, which means the price of the homes are growing faster than the denominator. But in an inflationary environment, which we're seeing, perhaps people want to lock in those things because I would suspect that home prices are going to be a leading indicator before rent prices. And what's going to happen is the numerator is going to go up faster than the denominator. And why that would happen is people are going to say, if we are in an inflationary period where there is no months of inventory, if we're in a very challenged environment to buy a house, I'd rather buy the house now, lock in low rates on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, and lock it all in. While rental prices are going to go up at the rate of inflation. If we have high rates of inflation, you're going to see rental prices probably continue up quite dramatically. Now, the last bubble that we had, that was a mortgage bubble. Agreed. Now, I'm going through here, and he gives some data on inventory. And the way that he gave the data is Austin's surge in inventory. He said it went up 78%. And then in Colorado Springs, it's up 38%. In Boise, Idaho, it's 38%. Salt Lake, 36%. I don't like using inventory on a percent basis on a January to May percent change in listings. That's not a good metric. So what I would prefer to look at, and I'm going to jump in here, and this is your May 2021 statistics for Austin Round Rock and City of Austin. And when you look, you got a 35% increase and a 42% increase in your median sales price. Your average days on the market are incredibly low at 16 and 15, which means homes are moving very fast. Your months of inventory is 0.5 months for both of these. You don't have a chance of declining in Austin, Texas. The scatter plot of months of inventory versus house prices. The x-axis here is the month-to-month change on the house price, and your existing home sales is your months of supply. You're at 0.5 months in Austin, Texas. 0.5 is down here. That's going to correlate to a 2% gain month over month, which is going to be a 30 or 40% gain potentially. Actually, let me see what that is, because if that's going to a 2% gain on a month to month. 1 times 1.02. So this is first month, second month, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th. It's a 26.8% gain every single year. Is a 2% gain month over month. So it's a 27% gain. In order for you to actually have a decline in Austin, Texas, you're going to have to go up, and this is just the potential decline. It's not 30% decline. This is a decline of 0% to 0.5% per month. And this is, it's about 8 months. From a 0 to 0.5, you have to get to 8 months of supply. If you're at 0.5 months, you need to go 1,500% increase in your inventory before you'll even see a possibility of a decline. Is between a 1,100% increase to 1,500% increase. That's how much your inventory has to go up to get between 6 and 8 months to get you in here, where the possibility of a month-to-month decline is 0 to minus 0.5%. Not 78%. You need to go up 1,000. We'll kind of put it in the middle. 1,300% increase is what you need before the possibility of a decline. Not a for sure decline, a possibility of declining. 1,300% increase in inventory is what is needed in Austin, Texas. Now, I looked at Colorado Springs. That's where I live. We have a white hot market, probably moving faster pace than Austin. Our percent increase year over year isn't as great as yours. We're at 28% average sales price, but we have 10 days on the market, and our inventory is about the same to hair lower. We need to go up the same percentage, 1,300%, just like Austin, Texas, before we can even see the possibility of a decline. So I disagree with your with the metrics that you're sharing. They're not correct metrics. The metrics you should be looking at are months of inventory, months of supply of inventory. It has to go over 6 months for the possibility of a decline. More like 7 or 8 months. You're at 0.5 months, just like Colorado Springs. I don't think there's a possibility of a decline yet until the inventory grows substantially. We are at record low inventories for all these cities. We are in a massive real estate expansion phase. We are underbuilt in our real estate by 3.8 million homes nationwide. We are in an expansion phase of real estate. And if you look at the housing starts, they're just entering an expansion phase. We are drastically underbuilt from the last bubble. The foreclosures messed up the housing market, which put us into a deficit of homes. This is the reason why we are so short on new homes. It was messed up from the last cycle. So in my opinion, we need to go up 1,300% in inventory in Austin, Texas, and in Colorado Springs before we see even the possibility of a decline. If you guys like this, please give me a thumbs up. I appreciate you guys listening. This is Finding Value.